Good evening, everyone. My name is Adam Bittner, digital sports producer for the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette. I'm here with Paul Zeise, sports columnist for the Post-Gazette, after a frustrating Steelers loss on Sunday Night Football against the Miami Dolphins. We are going to break everything down here, so stay up. Don't go to bed yet. Got plenty to talk about. Quite an ending there for the Steelers with a couple of Kenny Pickett interceptions late. Paul, before I kind of set everything up, what's your initial reactions to that loss? As we're just a few minutes after it now.
Well, obviously, the offense is to blame for that, but the defense had opportunities to make game-changing plays and interceptions, and they didn't do that. So there's a little bit of blame to them. I thought the other thing is, if Tua was any good, this game would have been over in the first half. The guy really left so many plays out there. So not to take anything away from the Steelers defense, but I'll tell you, watching that game, I would tell you if they face a quarterback who's better than Tua and better than Brady was last week, there's going to be plays that are there to be made. That being said, they did what they had to do. They got stops. They played tough. They forced, field goals when they could have given in and given up touchdowns. The Steelers have to get their offense fixed. There's no question about it. I think that part of the issue is the play calling is terrible. I think part of the issue is that you've got a rookie quarterback who's still trying to figure things out. And I think part of the issue is that it's been a long time. I mean, Pickens had a nice touchdown reception tonight, but it's been a long time since someone on that offense has made a spectacular play or made a really big game-changing play. So they need their playmakers to start being playmakers. And I think that's a big part of it. The running game is not ever really going to be good. I don't know, I'm not saying you give up on it, but this idea that you're going to win games that way, I'll tell you, it won't happen. But if I was Mike Tomlin and looking how your defense has played the last 2 weeks, knowing that you got T.J. Watt coming back, I might, for the Eagles game, go back to Trubisky and just take one more look at Trubisky and one more look at maybe, if he can do some things to generate some points. We get T.J. Watt back, all of a sudden now, we have a really good chance to win games. I'm not saying I would necessarily – I'd have to really look at it and think about it. But the defense is playing so well, you got to give them the best chance to win. And if Pickett continues to throw interceptions and not progress, at what point are you basically saying we're punting on this season? And that's not something the Steelers do, is it? They don't punt on the season. So that to me, for all of the, gushing over some of the throws that he's made here and there, they scored 10 points. And that's at the end of the day, that's what matters. They scored 10 points. And correct me if I'm wrong, Adam, but have they scored more than 20 in a game? What they score in the Bengals game? Maybe 23, and that was in overtime. In regulation, have they scored 20 or have they scored 21 or more in any game in regulation yet?
I'm not sure about that offhand, but definitely I would think not without the defense contributing points. We had the pick six in that Bengals game. I think that put them over the top in that one. But without defensive assistance, I think they've really been struggling to score. Before we get too far into it, I want to set things up for everyone. If you're just joining us for the first time on YouTube in particular, please subscribe to our channel so you don't miss a video. We'll have plenty of reaction to this game this week. Christopher Carter will be on with, I believe, Ray Fittipaldi tomorrow on the North Shore Drive, and we'll have plenty throughout the rest of the week. So please subscribe to the channel. Please hit the like button. That will help us out with the YouTube algorithm. And please check out our subscription deal, 6 months of access for just $6. That's going to get you through football season. It's a great deal. Please consider that if you're joining us for the first time. Paul, I do want to get into things with Kenny Pickett because I actually wrote this week that the analytics were narrowly favoring Mitch Trubisky. Mitch Trubisky was a top half quarterback, according to a lot of analytics. I think after a game like this where, he threw a couple of I think pretty bad interceptions late, I think you do have to reevaluate where you're going from here if the goal is to win. And I think that is the thing that's unclear to me is the goal to develop Kenny Pickett because he is a rookie. He's the guy that you're going to be able to build your team around because he's on a rookie deal. Or do you go to Mitch Trubisky to win a game here like you did last week or a game there, against Miami, or, maybe you can steal one in Philly next week. Tell me a little bit more about, your calculus and what you're feeling now. We don't want to be knee jerk. While there's a lot of people that have been clamoring for Kenny Pickett for a long time, and I think you and I both understood the logic in going to him. So I don't want to be too knee jerk, but I think that the way he played late in the game leaves plenty of reason to question whether it's his time yet.
Well, I mean, I think the other part of it is, what did he have? Three interceptions tonight, if I'm not mistaken, right?
Yeah, the early one, then the last two.
And really the last couple of probably the last 4, 5, 6 halves of football. The best half of football by a quarterback that was played was by Mitch Trubisky last week against Tampa. Which, by the way, are we still jumping for joy and celebrating the Tampa win as if they beaten a Super Bowl champion or a Super Bowl contender? Considering my guy from Temple, P.J. Walker, today took them down with the Carolina Panthers. But that's a different story for a different day. My feeling is, I think in Mitch Trubisky, they would have scored more than 10 points today. And I can't prove it, obviously. But I think what he does, is that he's a veteran. I think there's some plays that he would have made. I'm not saying they would have scored 30 points, but I think they would have scored more than 10 points. I don't think he would have thrown the interceptions, particularly the one the last one especially, but the one where he threw, like the second one where he threw it to a guy where, a veteran sees that Miami is just sitting on all of those routes right there. At 3rd and 16 there, if you are a veteran quarterback, that Miami is going to be sitting on those routes at about 15 yards, right? So you have to either throw it short and hope that your guy runs for like 8 or 9 yards, and then you have a 4th and manageable, or go deep. But Kenny tried to jam one in where there wasn't a hole. I just feel like, if you've got a veteran guy like Mitch Trubisky and your rookie is playing like a rookie, and you are trying to be serious with your team, because I think Mitch Trubisky won whatever fraction of the locker room he lost, early in the season. I think he probably won back in the second half last week. But my point is, if you are really serious about this season, you've got to be, and even if it's week to week, I know Mike Tomlin's like, well, we don't want to do that. We don't want to be, inconsistent in our quarterback play or this or that, the other thing. You know what, Adam? If you don't have a legitimate number one quarterback on your roster, you got to go with a hot hand. You got to go with a guy who's figured it out. You got to go with a guy and ride him. And maybe you go back to Mitch and he plays well for 2.5, 3 games. And guess what? He starts to fizzle out again, and then you go back to Pickett. At this point, you are trying to make the playoffs. That means every single week matters, and that means you can't worry about developing Kenny Pickett. You can't worry about, if we take him out here early, it's going to hurt his confidence. No, it's not. Kenny Pickett's a confident guy. He gets it. He's a winner. He wants to win. He's a competitor. He gets it, and he understands it. So if you have to take him out and put Mitch Trubisky back in, guess what? You're not going to stunt his growth. He's not going to need a therapy dog and all the other stuff to get through the next week. That's just not how he's built. So that can't be a consideration. It has to be, what is going to give us the best chance to win against the Eagles? And I would suggest against the Eagles and that defense that you're going to play against, and the fact that you might have to, score with them. I don't know how, if you're the Steelers, you aren't at least thinking long and hard about, maybe we need to go back to Mitch and try and go into Philadelphia and steal one, so we can get to the bye at 3-5. Because ultimately, if they lose next week, they get to the bye at 2-6. the margin for error in their last 11 games is very, very, very thin.
Paul, I think they're done if they're 2-6. Honestly, I thought this was the game they needed tonight. I thought this was a wounded Dolphins team. It looked pretty hot early in the season, but I think the expectation that Tua Tagovailoa was going to come in here and light up the Steelers' defense was probably a little unrealistic, and I think that's what we saw. Is that they weren't quite equipped to do that this week with him coming off the injury. So, I think this is the game they needed. We got a lot of people in the chat talking about Matt Canada, so I want to get to that because at one point in the second half, right before I think those final couple drives, I was looking at Kenny Pickett's stat line, and he was 21 of 26, I think, at one point, and I was thinking, wow, he's really completing a lot of balls, but where have they really been going? And then I started thinking, this looks a lot like the Ben Roethlisberger offense last year. Take out the fact that Mitch Trubisky and Kenny Pickett can make plays with their feet that Ben Roethlisberger couldn't. Take that off the table. What do you have left? You have these little dink and dunk to the sides that haven't been going anywhere, and you have a few shots deep that they're just not hitting. In terms of the design of the offense, does this feel different than what they were doing last year with Ben Roethlisberger, other than the fact that, on some occasions, including that big run early in the game, you were able to get a big run with Kenny Pickett? Take that stuff off the table. What's this look like to you?
I'll make 3 comments. One, Kenny Pickett had that one run, and other than that, his legs were no different than Ben's. I mean, they really weren't a factor in the game. But he did have the one run, so that's good. 2, as passive-aggressive and petty as Ben Roethlisberger is, do you think he was sitting in his house smiling in the last 3 minutes when Kenny Pickett couldn't get them over the top? Not because he doesn't like Kenny Pickett, but because the Steelers didn't want him back, and because his specialty last year, if you think about it, they were bad last year on offense, but the defense would keep the game close, right? They'd keep the game close with some special team stuff and this and that and the other thing. And Ben, at least 5, 6, 7 times last year in the last 4 or 5 minutes, would drive them down the field for a winning field goal or a touchdown, right? And that was the difference between last year and this. And actually, you and I think, even had this conversation way early on when we said that last year's team was probably propped up. What were they, 9-8 or whatever they were, 9-7-1, I think, or whatever they were. They were probably propped up by the fact that Ben was pretty miraculous late in games and won a few games that they probably shouldn't have won. Otherwise, they'd have been 9-1 probably or whatever. And the other reason I bring that up, and you could even say, hey, if Ben had played against the Lions, you know what? As ugly as that game was, he would have found a way to get one more field goal and they would have won the game. And I only bring that up because, it's the same offense. We're watching the same thing. The success they had last year was simply because they had an 18-year Hall of Fame guy who knew what he was doing and knew how to make plays, and, you know what I mean, whenever it came down to winning time.
And Paul, he took command at those crucial junctures, right. I think, and that's something that we haven't had that question answered for us, is how how much in charge are either of these quarterbacks, whether it's Mitch Trubisky or Kenny Pickett, to change the plays, to make the calls late, to get the ball where it needs. I agree with you. Is that it looks very similar to me statistically. It looks very similar in terms of the style. And third.
And that brings me to my third point, okay? The guy calling plays for this team is amateur hour. I mean, it's absolutely amateur hour. He's a college offensive coordinator, and I don't even know if he's a really good college offensive coordinator. I remember Pat Narduzzi got ripped for saying, I don't think he was that good, even though he had a great offense that 1 year at Pitt. If you take that year off his resume, right? And you're a numbers guy. A lot of times when they evaluate, there's a lot of different things that they'll evaluate this way. They'll say, throw your 2 worst and your 2 best. So your outliers, let's throw them away and let's look at your resume. This guy's resume is a joke. And the thing about it is, if you watch tonight, I mean, I'll give you a great example. Okay. Not once, but twice, somebody, and I'm assuming it's the guy calling plays, thought it was a good idea to throw the ball behind the line of scrimmage to the slowest human being to ever wear a football uniform, and I mean Zach Gentry. What in the hell is that? The one lost 5 yards. The other one, Gentry's about 7'1", and so he fell forward and got 2 yards. I don't understand what the point of that play is. There's plays where early in the game, they run it twice, and now it's 3rd and 6, and they have no chance, right? Instead of throwing early in, okay. Some of the throws some of the passes, passing plays that they run, they have no chance of being successful. And I'll give you this. On that last drive, I guess it was the last drive where Pickett threw that nice ball to Freiermuth in the middle of the field. Okay, they showed it on TV there. If the Dolphins just basically drop their middle linebacker, that throw isn't there. But of course, he was there basically in case Pickett took off. And my point is, right, the 2 plays before that play wasted so much time because they were short throws that were inbounds.
Paul, it doesn't seem to me like they can think outside of. I think that's watching that 2-minute drill. The thing that stuck with me is that they just didn't seem to be able to think outside of whatever he's setting them up to do in practice, because it seems like it's all running through the way he wants to run things, and that's why decisions are being made on the field in real time that you and I are just going to shake our heads at, scratch our heads at.
I mean, the one play, to be honest, was like a 3-yard pass. Who was it? To like Deontay or Claypool? I think the first play was a 3-yard little pass to Claypool. You'd have been better off throwing an incompletion there than taking those 3 yards, because that play wasted literally 25 seconds. And that's the point when you look at this guy in his offense and what he's done. And now we've got, 17 games plus a playoff game. That's 18 plus, what are they, 2 and 5? That's 25 games of watching this guy's offense. There's not a single person that watches the NFL that would tell you that this is one of the top 10 or top 20 or top 30 play callers in the NFL. He's terrible. And the problem is, last year everyone was able to blame, oh, well, Ben's old, he can't do this, he can't do that, this and that and everything. Okay, well, now you got 2 mobile quarterbacks, and the offense still can't score 20 points in a game. Not just 20. Tonight they couldn't even score 11. And so to me, when you think about it, the Steelers, and I know they're loyal, and I know all that stuff, and they're probably never, ever going to make a move like this. But if they really wanted to do something to show the team, to show the defensive guys, to show everybody else that, hey, we're serious, this guy would be on the unemployment line tomorrow, and they would just let Mike Sullivan, who has called plays before, let him be the offensive coordinator. Because I'm not saying he'd be some magical thing, but I guarantee you there would be a little bit of a response in a positive way, because I think these players know this offense is a joke. And I think you can see it in their body language. And I think there's guys that are just kind of confused as to what exactly is the goal when we get the ball. Is it to go down and score? Because it doesn't seem like that.
No, it seems very much like it's to run the system. And I think that's, to me, the most frustrating part of watching this offense is that, there's no thought about the situation. It's just, this is what we run every day in practice, regardless of situation. So we're just going to stick with this even when the game's on the line. And I think that was, the frustrating thing for me on that last drive. Paul, I want to get into a little bit with Najee Harris. We got some people talking in the chat about him. I thought he was brutal in short yardage tonight in situations where you and I have talked about in recent weeks. He needs to be money. And I think we have acknowledged that he's not going to be like Nick Chubb. He's not going to be the most elusive guy. He's not that running back. We have not seen that. Certainly not this possibly, hobbled version of himself. He's got to make some of those plays in short yardage, though, right? I mean, he's got to. Or I think I can think of at least 2 drives that were short-circuited where he needed to fall forward for a yard and didn't.
And not just this, Adam. The Steelers need to – I know he was their first-round pick. I know these things dictate sometimes how you, play and how you, figure out. But they had a short yardage 4th down or 3rd – I think it was a 4th down, actually, early in the game. And they gave it to Jaylen Warren. And what did he do? He ran over half of the Dolphins defense, and he got the 2 yards or whatever he needed for a first down, because that's the way he runs. So to me, when they went for it on 4th, I actually was yelling at the screen. Why do you have Harris in here for this? Hand the ball to Warren if you're going to hand it to somebody. And so, to me, again, personnel decisions are important. The Steelers have to decide what they want to be. And if they want to be a team that legitimately has a shot to maybe get a wild card, and we'll talk probably a bigger picture about that stuff a little bit later. But my point is, if the goal is still to salvage this season, they've got to start making personnel decisions based on production, based on situation, and stop making them based on some of these other things that aren't really that important, like who's getting paid what, like who was paid, who was drafted when, and all the other stuff. Play the best guys for each situation. And that's why, going back to the quarterback situation, I don't know that right now I can say definitively that Kenny Pickett gives them a better chance to win. And I'll say this, and probably will get thrown off of YouTube. I'm at this point I might actually give Mason Rudolph a shot. I mean, again, I laugh at people say, "Oh, there's no way we could do that. We couldn't do that." Well, how much worse could he be? You just scored 10 points in a game against a defense that's not exactly, the 72 Dolphins. That's not exactly a defense that's difficult to beat up on. That's not exactly a defense that was healthy. You just scored 10 points and threw 3 interceptions. How much worse can Mason Rudolph be? You lose 16-0? Is that what you're saying? I mean, come on. So I'm not saying you should go to Mason Rudolph, but that should all be on the table. If this coaching staff, standard is the standard, no losing seasons and all the other stuff, if that stuff still matters, then everything that we're talking about should be on the table. A quarterback discussion. There should be a discussion about using Jaylen Warren more in those, second and third and short, second and third and fourth and shorts. And maybe, there should be discussions about scrapping half of the playbook and coming up with a better solution to, listen, we've got too many plays that go nowhere. We got too many times where we complete passes and we go 3 yards. There's too much of that.
Paul, there's too much. I mean, there's too much belief in the athleticism of this team, I think. I mean, the whole theory of the offense to me is you're throwing the stuff short so your players can make plays in space. I haven't seen that in a season and a half. I've not seen the theory of what this we sit here and every training camp, everyone talks about how great these playmakers are and how all you have to do is get them the ball and they're going to go make plays in space and they're going to look explosive and they're going to look elusive. I haven't seen that with Ben Roethlisberger as the quarterback. I haven't seen that with Kenny Pickett as the quarterback. I haven't seen that with Mason Rudolph as the quarterback. I haven't seen that with 4 quarterbacks. I have not seen that theory of the case play out.
I got a kick out of it tonight where there was the one play where they threw a little pass to Najee Harris and he actually made a spin move or whatever and got 11 yards and Chris Collinsworth was going on and on and on about, this is Najee Harris we know. Actually, it's not. Actually, that Najee Harris we haven't seen. That might be the first time we've seen him since last year. And that's part of the problem. Usually that play is where he makes the little spin move. He either does a pirouette and falls down or he gets tackled and he gets 3 yards. It just so happened that time he made a play, but even that was like this great play. Let's celebrate. What was it? 11 yards, 10, 11 yards or whatever it was. It wasn't like he went for 30 or 40 yards. And the problem is you got with this team is that every single thing on offense is so hard. There's just, very few chunk plays. There are, and really, Adam, if we go back and look at the chunk plays that they've had, most of them were just miraculous catches by the receivers. But as far as when was the last time you can think of, they threw the ball to somebody in space, he made somebody miss, and he ran for another 20 or 30 or 40 yards.
When's the last time that we saw them look like Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle did at times tonight? And those guys didn't even have, I think their best game, but they were in space. They looked elusive. They were going downfield. And we haven't seen, I haven't seen the Steelers make those plays.
Well, here's the thing.
They don't look like that even when things are working.
Right. And here's the thing. Again, I'll go back to this. Tua's not very good. He's not very accurate. There were plays that if he would have made better throws, they would have had big catches. I can think of one over the middle where Tyreek Hill had a step and if he catches it, he's probably still running, and Tua threw it behind him. The play where Edmonds makes a nice play at the end there to break it up on the third down. Which, by the way, how stupid is this coach from Miami? You've got a team like the Steelers, who their offense stinks, okay, and you don't take a field goal to go up 19-10. Let's go there, but more importantly, on that 3rd and 3, you run the ball. You get down to the 2-minute warning, so there's no timeouts left for the Steelers, and they have 2 minutes. And if you don't make the first down, you punt it, okay? And now they get the ball with like 1 minute and 56 seconds or 1:55 or whatever, and they've got to go the length of the field with no timeouts. But okay, let's go with. But the throw, you know what the throw I'm talking about, where they went deep down the field, they went deep to Tyreek Hill.
Yes.
If that's a good throw, that's a touchdown. It was. I mean, Edmonds made a nice play, and there's of course the really overly sensitive Steeler fanboys got all upset on me on Twitter because I said if Tua makes a good throw there, it's a touchdown. And of course, it became. I'm trying to take away credit from the Steelers defense, and I'm trying to take away credit from Terrell Edmonds. Two things can be true. Okay. One, Terrell Edmonds made a pretty good play. Two, it was a bad throw. Both of those things can be true. I'm not taking away anything from the Steelers. My point is, Tua missed a lot of plays in this game tonight because I don't think the guy's very good. I know he's a guy that because of his days at Alabama, we're supposed to think he's going to become a star. He's not. He's just not very accurate. He's not even like this really high level athlete, where you get, the 20 and 30-yard runs from time to time, even like a Patrick Mahomes. He's not even that. But that's a different story for a different day. If we were talking about the Dolphins, all I'm talking about is in this particular case, to your point, the Dolphins receivers, when they catch the ball, they in space, they make people miss and they go for more yards. And they would have done it a few times if Tua had delivered the ball on time and accurately.
Yeah, and let me be clear. I mean, I don't expect that every play, Paul, but again, it gets back to what are the Steelers supposed to look like if they're good? What are these groups? What's this group of players supposed to look like in the best case scenario? And we've seen none of that from them. And so I think that's, my biggest source of frustration is that I've never seen the theory of this is what the Steelers offense is capable of actually play out, even when they've won games going back to last season. Paul, I want to ask, I want to get to Chase Claypool because a couple of people have mentioned him in the chat too. He made a couple nice conversions on that second to last drive, much like he did last week, but otherwise he was kind of a no-show. After that big game last week, there's been some conversation about at the trade deadline, he could be one of the few pieces the Steelers have to bring some draft capital in. Where do you fall on that after watching him tonight? Maybe not really back up that effort. Do you think he's a guy that should be on the trade market? Do you think he's someone the Steelers should be trying to keep on board here if they are going to try to make a run in the second half with the schedule lightening up? Again,
if you're going to trade Chase Claypool, then you basically have signaled that you're done with your season. You basically are saying that, and I'm not saying he's Jerry Rice, but he's still one of your best players and one of your best playmakers on offense. If you take him out of the mix, and I know that, Calvin Austin, from what I can tell, Calvin Austin is already getting measured for his jacket at Canton, Ohio, according to all these Steeler goofballs who go on and on and on social media and on everywhere else about how it's such a crime that this Calvin Austin isn't playing. You know what I mean? So, excuse me, I get it. They're keeping a Hall of Famer out of the lineup by not having him in the game. But let's face it, Chase Claypool is one of your best offensive players, whether you like him or not, whether you like, some of the things he did in social media or not. And tonight he didn't really have a great game. He played, he made a couple of plays, but that's who he is. I mean, I don't know that he's the superstar. When I saw that, the Steelers are asking, like, whatever it was that Christian McCaffrey got for Chase Claypool, that was telling me that the Steelers don't want to trade him. So, I think the trade deadline is after the bye, right? It's like the day after the bye week, I think.
Yeah, I mean, it's coming up soon.
I think it's that Monday after their bye week, right? If they go to the Eagles game next week and they get skull dragged, right, and they lose, Now they're 2-6 and they go into the bye. If someone gives them a decent offer that is, legitimate for them, then I could see, okay, yeah, we're going to trade. But I don't know what you're going to get for him unless he has another big game. And if he has another big game, they might win. Now you're 3-5, and you can't give up on the season. So, to me, I thought that whole thing with Chase Claypool was more of a talk show. Let's dumb down the conversation, talk show kind of thing, because it really doesn't make sense if you take the Steelers at their word that their stated goal, which is we think we can make the playoffs this year, that we're not rebuilding, that we're going to be a playoff team. Well, playoff teams or teams that are in a playoff hunt generally don't trade one of their best players, especially when they don't have many others like them. And, I think that's the thing. Deontay Johnson, he's a singles hitter. That's what he's been. He's a singles hitter. And so to me, it's always amazing when people have these conversations. It just doesn't make a lot of sense to me. It just doesn't. I never liked that, and I thought it was a silly idea.
Yeah, the only thing I'd say, Paul, is that I think they are done, and I think they can tell us every day. Mike Tomlin can spin his theories about whether they're in it or not, and the Steelers can have as much history as they want of going for it at all times. But at some point, you got to acknowledge reality, and I wonder if 2-6 going into the bye, with the way the Bengals looked offensively today, I think that the one thing the Steelers had going for them going into this week is that no one was running away with this AFC North. But I think the way the Bengals played today makes you say maybe they're heading in the right direction. They're starting to put this division away. And if that's the case, don't you want to start building up draft capital? So, yeah, I think it's a matter of do you take the Steelers at their word or not? Paul, I want to get into the defense. Did you have something there?
I was going to say that was the thing about the Bengals. We talked about the Bengals last week, and I said it looks like they're starting to figure things out. It looks like their offensive line is figuring some things out. Joe Burrow is playing, and I said we'll know this week because they're playing a very mediocre team at home. And if they're legitimately going to be a Super Bowl contender, they'll take it to them and do what they do and do what the Chiefs and the Bills and those kind of teams seem to do when they play these mediocre teams come to their house. They blow them out. And so to me, the Bengals now have won 4 out of their last 5. Their loss was a really, really tough loss to the Ravens by 2 points. Otherwise, they'd be on a 5-game winning streak. They look to me clearly like the best team in the division, and I think they'll get on a little bit of a roll. I just think that when you look at that, now you have to say, okay, what are our wild card possibilities? Well, who are the teams right now that I think probably I would say New England is a team you're going to contend with. You're going to contend with Baltimore, right? The Chargers, who, God bless them. I don't know what goes on with that team every single year. It seems to be the same story, right? The Jets, who, by the way, have a tiebreaker over you. So what happens is you start to look at the teams that you're competing with. The math starts to get a little tricky for you. After you get, a couple more weeks into the season, if you're 2 games behind some of these teams, it's going to be really
3 games behind.
What's that?
It's like you're 3 games behind if you've lost these tiebreakers like they have.
That's right. And there's a tiebreaker they just lost tonight. So, I mean, if you think about it, it's going to be difficult. But I think if you're the Steelers, you keep, pushing forward. But if you lose to the Eagles next week and you're 2-6, and again, you say, oh, well, TJ Watt, they scored 10 points tonight. So if TJ Watt was there, I mean, I don't. You're an analytics guy. Was he worth 7 points? Basically, is what he would have had to been worth. I don't know. I mean, I don't know. Could he have held the Dolphins to 1 touchdown and 4 field goals? Well, guess what? They still would have lost 12-10. So, I mean, my point is, I don't know that TJ Watt makes a difference in this game. I mean, obviously he makes a difference, but all I'm saying is they've really got to figure out who they are and what they want to be.
Yeah, I agree. I want to get into the defense a little bit, Paul. It's getting late, so thank you again, everyone, for staying with us. If you have a question, please open the video in YouTube and toss it in. We'll try to get to as many as we can before we sign off here. Obviously, it was a slow start for the defense, but they came on late. Do you think that they adjusted well? Do you think that they just started executing better, or was it a combination of both?
I think they did some good adjustments. I thought they executed better, and I also thought that the Dolphins executed worse. I mean, again, all three things can be true. Me saying, Tua missed some throws and, Tua missed some plays, and they had the 1 3rd down where the guy dropped the ball, just flat out dropped the ball. He had Robert Spillane, trailing him. He probably would have got another 8 or 9 yards in the first down. The drive goes on. Tua missed some easy throws. That was a part of it. But that doesn't mean that the Steelers didn't play well, because they did. I thought they made good plays on defense. I thought they didn't catch the ball, but the defensive backs were around the ball a lot. Correct me if I'm wrong, I don't think they got a sack tonight, so that was part of the problem. But at the end of the day, the defense did what you need to do. You kept the team in the game. You gave them a chance. All they needed was one big play, and they win this game. So I think that's a testament to the way the defense played. I think they adjusted. They made some good adjustments, but I think adjustments sometimes are overrated. It comes down to playing better, and I thought they played better, especially up front. And they were able to, slow down that running game, because early on they were getting gassed for some big runs. But they were able to make some adjustments. That part of that's beating your guy off the block and getting into the right gaps. And, so, hey, you put TJ Watt back on this defense and they can get pressure on quarterbacks again, maybe it gets to a point where the defense is close to being elite. But if your offense is only going to score 10 points, I mean, when the Steelers had in the Ravens, in the early 2000s, when they had the number 1 defense in the league and the number 1 or number 2, they were still giving up 14, 15 points a game. I mean, you got to score more than 10. And I think the Steelers, now that they scored 10 tonight, what are they averaging? Because they were averaging only about 15 or 14 a game going into this game.
Yeah, it's bad. I think the only thing I'd say about the defense is you got to make at least one of those picks.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, you have to, and it's like what worked in that Bengals game, because I feel like that was the template for what a winning Steelers effort looked like. 5 turnovers you're probably not going to do most weeks like they did that week. But you got to get 1 or 2, and you got to at least get one that puts the offense in position to have an easy drive, not have to drive the length, because this offense, we know it's not going to drive the length of the field. You got to put it in positions where they can do a couple things right and succeed and get 7 easy points. You don't have to, get pick sixes every week, but you got to put the offense on short fields where it has a chance to succeed. And they had chances tonight, and it didn't happen. And I think that would be my biggest complaint, is that these guys are getting paid a lot of money to do that, knowing that the offense has these weaknesses. And,
right.
And it's not just this week. You've seen, in other games they haven't made those plays either. So that's my only quibble that I would have with their performance tonight. Is they had chances. Yes, they kept the team in the game. They had a chance. They had chances to win the game, and they didn't do it.
Well, and the difference really in the game, if you think about it, is the difference was Miami's defense made 3 interceptions, right? And the Steelers defense couldn't get it done. I'm trying to see, have we seen anything out of the Steelers locker room yet? I'm just trying to pull something up here, see if I'm not sure.
I'll stall for you, Paul, while we're doing that.
I'm just trying to see if we've seen any, interest, any interesting,
thoughts and comments,
quotes yes. from the coach or from the players or whatever. I don't see anything. So unfortunately, I'm just looking real quick. But yeah.
I thought it was a good performance, but could have been better. Did want to ask you about Terrell Edmonds, because I wrote a little bit about him this past week. I think he had a couple nice plays again tonight. Is he a guy that we need to start talking about the Steelers possibly holding on to him, because he steps up and run defense a lot like Minkah Fitzpatrick does. He makes some underrated plays. He's graded by Pro Football Focus as one of the best safeties in the league. What have you thought about his game this year? And
he's been really good, really good. And like anything else, it almost always is going to be coming down to the contract. You can only pay so many of your guys, and he's playing his way into a pretty big contract or a pretty good contract. I mean, if you're Terrell Edmonds now, you're what? This is your 5th year, I think, right in the league. Fifth.
Yeah, he got a 1-year deal this year.
He got a 1-year deal. This is your 5th year. Guess what? This contract now has to be the one you get paid if you're going to get paid. This is a guy you're not going to, you get a 4-year deal or 3 or 4-year deal. Now all of a sudden you're at the end of that, you're in an old safety. You're not going to get. So this one has to be the one that if he goes and gets paid on, and I think that so he's kind of playing his way out of Pittsburgh. Like they obviously would want to keep him, but when you've got Watt, Minkah Fitzpatrick, you got Cam Hayward, right? You got 3 of the highest paid defensive players in the league right there. I mean, at some point you're going to have to find a way. Now they're lucky because they don't have a quarterback making a big chunk of change, so they had that luxury. But at the same time, it's already the most expensive defense in the league.
Yeah, there's a limit. There's a limit to what you can do.
I just don't know if it's realistic, especially if he continues to play the way he's playing.
Yeah, no, I think that was the danger of bringing him back on a 1-year deal. Maybe you could have gotten a discount and brought him back for a couple of years last year when I thought he had a decent year last year, and you might have liked to see him get a 2 or 3 year deal, keep him here for a little bit longer. But now he is, I agree, kind of playing his way out. Paul, any final thoughts? We're over 40 minutes. I think this is our longest one of these chats. I think things are starting to boil over here. Anything else you want to get off your chest?
No, I mean, I think that next week now the season in my mind next week is on the line, because if you go 2-6, into the bye, you're 2-6 with so that's 8 games. That means you got 9 left. You have to go. You've got to find a way to win 7 of those 9 games in order to go, have a winning season. I think that's really unrealistic. I mean, the Ravens aren't great, but you got to play them twice. You got to figure you probably split with them. So that's probably 1 loss there. I'm going to say you probably are going to lose to the Bengals when you play them again, because when they come in here, they're going to be playing at a high level. There's a couple other games, if you look down the stretch, that I think are going to be difficult for them. So going 2-6, I think at that point, the whole thing about winning seasons and all that probably is going to go out the window. And at that point, that's when you talk about maybe trading a Claypool or whatever. And that's why I say if you're going to, like next week, you have to be all in to win next week. And that's when you start to think about, well, maybe we go back to Mitch Trubisky. Maybe, we'll use Jalen Warren some more. Maybe we'll, mix some things up or whatever. We've got to try and win this game. Because then if you lose it, you can use the second half, after the bye. Then you can go back to Kenny Pickett and use it as his development, 8 or 9 games of his development, and try and get him better and get him ready for next year, right? And do some of those things. But next week you have to be all hands on deck, and we're all in to win. And that means you might have to make some personnel decisions that you wouldn't make under a different circumstance.
Yeah, I completely agree, Paul. Interesting discussions to be had for the rest of the week. Again, Christopher Carter will be back tomorrow morning, North Shore Drive podcast. So if you haven't already, please subscribe to the YouTube channel. Just hit that button down there. You'll get all of our reaction this week. Critical week coming up for the Steelers. We'll also be getting into some Penguins, maybe a little bit of college football talk. Big game between Penn State and Ohio State this week. Make sure you're subscribed, tuned in for all of this. Check out that subscription deal I mentioned. I'll have the link in the description. We'll be back next week. Actually, I don't think I'm going to be here next week, Paul. I think I'm leaving things with Chris. He's going to be steering the ship. So
okay.
We're going to do a bit of a different voice in here.
That'll be good. That'll be interesting.
All right, Paul. Well, thank you so much for talking to me. It's 12:15, so everyone get some rest, and we'll get you some more sports talk for the rest of the week. Have a good one.
We'll see you, man.